and everybody else. We did unfortunately have the fire that happened a couple weeks ago, so we're working through that. But it really does beg the question of the prioritization of needing to get an agreement in place, and so that everybody's clear on what the roles and responsibilities are. How one of the issues when we first met is this group back in January, I think, was talking about how can the groups who are very committed to youth sports here in Santa Clara play a more active role in working with the city, particularly in getting credit for the value that they bring from their perspective of the organizations for both maintenance and programming, and how do we take advantage, because the Parade of Champions was originally really a celebration of youth sports. And so how do we get back to that, right? And how do we make sure that we have that level of collaboration and support for youth services? Hi, welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself? We're just going around and introducing ourselves for real quick.
Ms. Anurag.
Let me introduce you to Damon Sparacino. He's the new director of Parks and Recreation. He's here. This is his first week. And so we're just going around having the groups introduce themselves and tell them who you are, what you do in Santa Clara, and then any concerns, the concerns you have with respect to the relationship with the city and fees. So do you want, I think we've gotten through everybody. Do you want to share your perspective?
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's great.
Okay. Is there anybody else online besides Michelle? So just to be clear, these meetings are open to anybody who wants to participate. So we've made that offer to everybody. So again, Kevin didn't relate to necessarily youth sports, but we've invited other folks who we thought would be interested. So we have the discussion. So I want to transition a little bit to the Wade Brummal. So at our last meeting, we came to an agreement of all the different changes we wanted. The one item that I have not been able to get a resolution on is the request, I think it was from the swim team, include as an eligible group, those groups that are special needs. And that, I talked to the city attorney again this morning to ask him to look at it again. Conceptually, we think we're okay. We can come up with some language. So he's going to work on some language that we can include in the report to council to commission first. So we will get the packet done. We have some Ray Brummal grants that we're going to take at the same time, and those RTCs are not quite complete yet. So the committee meet is going to be not the 18th, but the 25th. So I sent out an email to Mike and Linda because you guys had offered to speak at the event at the meeting. But that will be, we'll have incorporate all the changes. We were at everybody had agreed to the changes at last meeting we went through, spent a lot of time going through that. But what the one issue that I mentioned earlier that we had not discussed as a group was requirements on the organizations to receive it in terms of some training for cyberbullying or positive coaching, those kinds of things. So just putting it out to the group for your benefit, there was a young man who took his life because he was subject to cyberbullying from his football team. And he was unhoused and lived at Bill Wilson. And so because this is a group around sports, I just wanted to raise that issue with you guys and seeing as collectively as a group, do you want to talk about that discussion about providing some citywide training to all of the organizations? Do you want to be silent on this issue? I just think it's such it's an issue that really hit home in this community. Staff has known the young man since he was young, grew up in our programs. And so when you hear something as tragic as a young man taking his life as a result of cyberbullying, it really makes you stop, right? And think about what are we doing as an organization to make sure that we're communicating values, that kind of behavior is not going to be tolerated, that we're going to support all of our young people. And so I just wanted to put it out there and get some feedback from you guys.
Oh, for us, we have to maintain certain educational requirements with USA Swimming, and one of them is what's called safe sport, and that includes training on bullying, cyberbullying, and how to handle it, how to how to foster an environment where those things don't happen, and then how to proceed if something does happen. So we already received that training as coaches. Every coach that's a registered coach with our organization has to go through that training.
What about the other groups? Do you guys do any internal trainings? Just, oh,
We don't do bullying training, but it's something definitely could be used. We do a lot of other things.
so I'm not familiar with that training. So is there a cost associated with sitting people?
For us, be a coach member, you have to pay a registration, annually registration fee, and it's included. That all the training, required trainings through USA Swimming are included as part of that fee. That we know that.
If you have it for soccer, right?
Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
You said you guys pay for it, the training as well, or?
Don't make anything pay for it, anything we would come.
Right.
We get it through our insurance. It's concussion training and
Yeah.
basic first aid.
Yeah.
Stuff, just basic, very basic. First aid and concussion.
We require CPR to do for,
So, I guess what I'm looking for is do we need to create some kind of standard across all the organizations and make it available? And so one thought that comes to mind as you guys are talking is that maybe we make that training an eligible reimbursement for the grade Brummal, right? And that way we make sure that people can get the training. We don't have that in the policy right now, but it seems like it would be something. I don't know if this group wants to think about that or raise that issue, but it does seem like with all the post-COVID environment and the mental health issues that young people are struggling with these days, if it's a city understanding what our values are and how our commitment to providing that safe space seems to be pretty consistent from what I've heard from you guys up to this point in these meetings.
I think that's where maybe some of our frustrations have come from. I feel like the city understands that partnership we bring and the value we bring to these youth, because not all kids make this full teams, and they're not always comfortable on those teams, but we're other outlets for them to come to. And like we've been talking about, we have scholarships. They don't need to worry that they're going to get bullied because they don't have a pair of cleats. Like, well, we take care of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take
We
care of
provide
them.
cleats, we provide any
Yeah.
necessary equipment they need to play the sport.
So I think that's the biggest thing. We want the community to recognize our values to youth like that. And so whatever we need to do training, more than happy to do it. We definitely want to be a safe space for them.
Mostly when you join, you have just basic training, safe sport and all, but definitely not, there's no training on the mental health and but mostly what do we do if somebody get hurt or, sexual harassment, those kind of training, but nothing to do with mental health.
So what do you want me to do? So we're ready to draft the Wade Brummal policy to go to Park and Rec Commission. Do we want to say that it would be an eligible reimbursement expense? Do we want to just be silent on it? It seems to me like that would be something that would be a statement that we would want to include in the policy, right? That we want to make sure that we're providing a safe environment. And then the question of whether or not that training is provided, and maybe we encourage all the coaches from all the sports and we provide the training on it and invite everybody to it, or you guys do it and you guys do it on a reimbursement and we just get a roster of who's been trained.
I think we've done that. Right. Submitted reimbursement first. One, I think he sent all his coaches some type of training. But it wasn't defined in our, which is what I think you're wanting to do. But I think that would be smart.
I agree. I think it's a pretty important issue, and I think the more that it can be taught how to handle, how to prevent this from happening, the better. I think for organizations where we are already doing that, I don't know that my coaches would be excited to take another class. We already have about 10 to 12 hours a year that we do an online training that's required in various things.
It might already be included in the training you do.
It is.
And then all you would have to do, so we wouldn't have to list the specific training. It
Sure.
would be relative to bullying and
Right.
and things like that. And then it would be up to, as Cynthia mentioned, the groups to submit a list of coaches who they keep the certifications on file. But if we ever called into question, you'd be able to produce them.
And I think in regards to like part of our conversation last time with getting the information out to the community, we have started kind of working on the back end on webpage design and how to connect all of it. So we thought we would list all of our partners, all of our youth group partners, and in that we can say all of our partners have gone through the same sport training, concussion training, like that's an expectation that we have. And that it's listed on there. So when people do find that page and they land on there, they can see the scholarships, they can see who we work with, and then it would direct them back to your guys' pages to do the applications and whatever else, but making that connection and seeing what what we're saying we value that.
I think a worthwhile investment would be to create a program where athletes can get
Not just coaches.
education and training on this issue. Right? And almost maybe require the organizations that are a part of this, that their athletes go through the training. I don't know how feasible that is, but
Well, and so my daughter she will be turning 18 in January, and anybody who was turning 18 by the end of this season had to go through, I don't know if it was Safe
It
Sports,
is.
very similar to Safe Sports, so she just
when
finished.
you're 18, yes, but what about the 14, 15?
Exactly.
Maybe
So,
12.
Here, that she had to go through and learn, and with all the stuff that we
It's
go
a
through.
simplified version of what coaches take, yeah,
So there is an athlete version, huh?
but only when you're 18, because you're.
Oh, gotcha.
You're interacting with minors.
Yes.
So as an adult now.
Yeah.
well under,
So I was wondering if that type of training is in the ether or not.
There is.
I imagine there's organizations that do it.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is we are all on the same page about having a value statement saying that we're going to provide safe spaces. What I'm hearing also is that we would have a process where we could get, for those groups that have an existing program, as long as they provide documentation that they've done it, they could be eligible for the reimbursements for some cost there. And if groups who don't have it, they could apply for a grant. That would be an eligible grant or reimbursement expense. Is that what I'm hearing? Or do you want us the city puts it on and then the coaches are required to come?
How many coaches you guys all have, but
A lot of it's online.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
How
We host it.
you guys want to structure this, right?
It'd have to be on.
Yeah.
Then you get a little certificate.
Yeah, most of those print out certificates,
Yeah.
send them to the league. League would keep them on file.
So this group is comfortable with putting that into the policy?
The reimbursable, as a reimbursable expense is what you're saying, right? Oh, there you
Minute and 15-minute presentations of courses.
So do we want to say that anybody, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, so you're stating that it would be, then become a requirement.
That's what I'm asking.
For the organizations, if not, it would just stay as optional, so, which I don't think is the point.
If you want to make requirement, I would suggest that should be sponsored by city, like you can have one training session or whatever. Because what I have noticed is when we ask our coaches to do certain training from the course, that they take forever and tracking becomes very difficult. But if they know that they are coming here and 4 o'clock, there is a training, they will just do it. Then they don't mind. But otherwise they think, okay, now the list, and they will not probably, they will just skip it, right? They will just do enough to get the certification without understanding what they have to do. So this is my take, but again, I understand the situation.
And going back to the eligible funds that are available, this would be the grant, which would be after all scholarship money is.
Well, that's something to discuss, right? So it seems to me that
If it's a requirement for us.
Exactly, so.
that's where I think it needs to be ahead of it. I think we would have to set aside some money to do that. But to your point, does it say on, I'm assuming you're on the website, they're saying that they offer it free?
Yes, those trainings are free for parents and kids at Apple. And it looks like they do require parental consent for the kids to take the courses, and that they encourage the adults, the parents to take the courses with their kids. But there are 3 different that are offered free for parents and youth.
So we could say for the scholarships that all the kids have to, and the parents need to attend the workshop. It's no cost. We could sponsor a night here. I'm assuming we could do it all together.
It looks like they might be.
Yeah. So we could have the parents do it in order to get the scholarship. And then for the coaches, we could do the reimbursable at the end after all the scholarships are done.
So how are you gonna justify a requirement for scholarship children and not a requirement for non-scholarship children?
That's a good question.
I could see a requirement for all coaches so they could recognize it. I'm not sure that we're,
It's not equitable, it's just.
yeah, I'm not sure we should require it for all the participants.
I think it'd be very hard to,
Yeah, that would,
manage it.
it would be very hard to manage.
Because you have
it.
2,000
Yeah,
kids. So,
Yeah.
try to track 2,000 people, whether they took that or not. The coaches, like, I had 30 soccer coaches, that's easy to track. Right, 30 names with a little check mark for each requirement.
Yeah, well, and the kids, it's the parents too. So it's a factor of 1 to 2. So if it's 2,000 kids, it's between 4,000 and 6,000 total.
Yeah.
Could encourage, I mean, you don't have to say it's not a requirement for the kids and parents, but you could encourage it and send out the links. when they're
Oh,
ready.
absolutely. I'm not saying not to encourage it. I'm saying put it out there. By all means, go look at this if you want. Watch it with your child. I would strongly suggest they watch it with their children, especially the younger children.
So what if we did this? What if we say it's a requirement for the coaches and it's a requirement for the organizations to let their parents and the athletes know that these resources are available and then encourage them to participate in that?
We can just put a link on our sports agent.
But we would say it on the policy saying, as an organization, we are going to encourage all organizations who receive Ray Brummal to put out a notice to their athletes that it's available.
That's not difficult to put something on a website.
And we stick with the age group that they are recommending at 13 to 17.
Does that sound reasonable?
You said there was a younger one also, Tammy?
Yeah, I got the catalog, I'll go ahead, I have all your email addresses, I'll forward the catalog.
Because it's not a requirement, but they can push it out to all ages.
Push it out to everybody.
Yeah, but
Season starts usually, it's like, hey, I'm Coach Bob, welcome to my team. Watch these videos, whatever, I mean, it's part of the welcome email.
Yeah.
and
And then
then,
it's also on our website.
The course
Like
is
registration.
they encourage, it teaches them what it means to be a good teammate and how to recognize the difference between abuse and discipline, right? And those kinds of things. It looks like, and they look very age appropriate.
Okay.
So I'll send you guys the catalog.
then you're still suggesting that the coaches, however, are required.
In those cases.
Really required is the-
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, like we require a lot of stuff through our insurance. So that would suffice, that would fulfill the requirement that we're talking about.
As long as there's some cyberbullying, I think it's the cyberbullying, right? It's not the first aid. That's,
No, it wouldn't be a bullying video in addition to the head trauma protocols and the first aid.
so
Or they're free through insurance.
Okay, so everybody's,
Training them to,
exactly.
training them for the high school sports. It's all free through their insurance.
Okay, so no one has a problem if we require it for the coaches, no costs. If it comes up as an issue later, we can always come back and redress it, but we'll include that. We'll include a provision that the groups are going to encourage their parents and athletes to take it and make the information available on their websites.
Is it, again, something that, is it possible to have that training? Like on live training instead of?
Like a hosted one also. You're asking, could the city host one?
Yeah,
Little,
Angelique, is that possible?
I'm just wondering if, like, you as the adult get some sort of certificate, so.
You have to individual.
Yeah. You're right.
Would get that, because I know like my husband coaches, he gets a certificate when he completes the training, and then he turns it into the school district.
Right.
We can do that and have a sign-in sheet, I just need to know how we make that official. But we can.
because like, there is one thing to do training, and other thing is to be effective training, and I always believe you do online, it's just, they just skip to the last question answer and do it. I've seen a lot of them, and if you do on, direct presentation or something, I think they will get 50% of it, if not all. So that's the difference, and it will be more effective, but you know what to do.
So we're all in agreement at this point? Yes?
But it wouldn't be, you wouldn't take advantage of the online one, the coaches would still take advantage of the online one. Because if things change, we wouldn't necessarily have the ability to, just on the spot, just keep.
No, I know.
Doing that.
The reason I'm saying, yeah, I mean, there are some coaches who just don't do online. They just start becoming nervous. They're like, but
We can work with the library and we could do like a computer drop-in class, right? Where if all the computers are set up, you just come in at a scheduled time from 5 to 7 and you come in and take it, right? And if they have any questions, we can have somebody there to answer questions. And that's easy enough to do.
I mean, if that is a good alternative where you can come here, do it, and somebody's there to explain it to them, that would be very good
I
balance.
don't have a problem like in the fall, let's say, for the 24-25 season, saying, here's gonna be our safe sport meeting for this, whether you're, coaching in the fall, the winter, the spring, whatever. Here's your opportunity to come and we're gonna host it this one time a year. And then if it's outside of that, then they need to go to the online options.
I know some coaches who are their 14-year-old son to do all this training for them, and finally they get certification.
Sure.
Because various reasons. There's just not one reason. There are many reasons.
Yeah.
Language, everything. So I mean, again, it comes down to how effective you want. So.
Okay, we want it to be effective, right? And we want people to take advantage of it. So we'll figure out some way to address that. Okay, so thank you for indulging me on the way, Brummal. I just given what had happened, I didn't want to not have a conversation about that going forward. And again, we've changed the date to the way Brummal going on the 25th at 7 o'clock in the cafeteria. So encourage anybody who wants to come to the presentation to participate. That would be great. So any questions? The 25th.
Thanksgiving.
Yep, Monday.
It'll be hybrid also.
Yeah, it's going to be hybrid.
You can also,
If you want to give us comments, we can put a letter in or whatever as well. But just want to make sure if you guys knew about it.
You can email in.
Okay, the second thing is for a group, we just wanted to acknowledge that Mike has been named as the 2024 honorary tree lighter for the holidays. So if you get him to the tree lighting, in recognition of all of his work with the city, whether it's for the Park and Rec Commission or through PAL, and just being an advocate for young people in Santa Clara. So congratulations, Mike.
Thank you.
Sent a great picture of his family, so that we'll include into the event. So it'll be a nice event. So remember the December 6th, the 6th at 7.
5:30, the event begins. Yeah.
Please come cheer him on and let's all say thank you to Mike for all of his work. So
Appreciate it.
I know that Mike started here 2017, I think. And my first introduction to Mike was working the Art and Wine Festival at the beer and wine booth. So
We always had fun. We always had fun.
exactly, exactly. So thank you, Mike. Okay, so now let's talk about fees. So the last time we were here, we had a number of different issues. But again, before I go into what I want to talk about, I did want to make sure that you all had the opportunity, and I know you came in late. The issue is Damon this is his first week. And so he doesn't have his email set up yet, doesn't have a business card. And since we were meeting, I wanted him to have an opportunity to hear directly from you before he hears from us about any concerns you have about the youth sports fees or anything you would like him to know about your program. So before we go on, just want to make sure, because I think everybody else got a chance. Just want to make sure you have a chance.
I replied, there's no concern, no nothing, everything is good, very well organized city, so definitely my hats off to all the work you guys do.
We spent a lot of time last time talking about where the fees go and our maintenance fees and all of that. There was no questions on that. I think everybody feels pretty comfortable where the fees come. One of the issues was around what are other people charging in the area. And so we actually have a meeting scheduled with a consultant on Friday to talk a little bit about fees in general on swimming. Not just for here, but also because of the swimming. Did I get the wrong group? Sorry, I've got the wrong meeting, sorry. We do have the meeting with this consultant on Friday to talk about swimming fees, but not sports fees, sorry. But we do have the information that I have on my website, on my laptop. Let me pull it up from the other cities, because we had collected some information from the the benchmarking. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. And I think everybody, the feedback that we had gotten last time was that one remark was that we should be looking to charge more from the groups that use the turf fields and looking at and having higher fees for that. And then looking at lower fees for the diamond fields or diamond sports for the sake of. And then wanting to make sure that we looked at the different categories. So one of the things that happened when we did the cost recovery policy is that all of the youth sports groups, all the nonprofit groups got lumped into one category. And so there wasn't a distinction between the nonprofit youth and the nonprofit adult, right? And so we wanted to take a look at that. And then also looking at the different categories of user groups. And so, let's see if I can pull it up. Let me get to here first. I did have Michelle. Thank you very much, Michelle, because I know you're on the line. She sent me their categories, and so I'll put that up as well as soon as I can find this. Second.
That went to, there used to be a separate fee for lit fields versus non-lit fields. And then over the years that transitioned out to, so that could be.
In that category.
Too.
So,
The only problem with that is, if you don't use the lights, why do you need to pay extra? I understand when, like right now, you're using lights.
Only in the winter.
Only, you'd only pay.
So there would be that stipulation.
Yep.
Yeah,
Or the ask is for lights. Yeah, if the ask is for lights,
yeah,
it could be a consideration.
yeah.
Should be able to share some.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. How do I do that? Go back to Teams. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Yay, we figured out technology. Okay, so these are the different rates that the school district has and the different groups that she gave me for the different, yeah, there we go. For the different groups. So she did send me the email. Hold on a second. She did send me the definition of the emails, the different groups too. And I'm sure you guys are aware of them. But wanted to use this as a basis for a discussion because you can see on natural grass, there's a big difference in the costs, right, between the different categories. Group 1.5 is the definition, I think, that they use for nonprofits. Let's see if it's anything.
These are Santa Clara rates.
Yeah, these are Santa Clara. This is Santa Clara Unified rates.
That's school district, which is totally different than.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I want, because we're all in the same community. So like Linda's saying, they use the school district's rates as well. So I'm just giving you this comparison so you can see sort of where we are in the market. Is this not opening?
That is a youth group. That you have to be approved by the board.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to be approved.
be approved every year.
Is she chatting?
Mhm.
Rates to start.
Group 2 has 8% under 18 at 10 Santa Clara Unified School Districts.
Is she online? Can you ask her, can she send it to me directly so I can share it? I thought she had put it in her email, but
In the chat.
yeah. I thought she had put it,
Putting in chat.
So the group 2 is probably for profit. Where the group 1.5 is nonprofit.
No, not necessarily.
Hmm?
No,
No,
1.5 has to be approved by the district board.
right, as a nonprofit.
It will be a nonprofit. That's
not
the requirements, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that group 2 is not a nonprofit.
it's,
We're currently using school district rules. We're group 2. We're nonprofit.
They don't have a difference between nonprofit and for. It's just who attend the relationship to the school.
Yeah, it's the 1.5 that you're,
Is the only group that it's just called a youth group that's approved by the board and.
she's putting in the chat.
Yeah.
I
I
don't-
asked her to share. So see if she'll be.
Okay, is she coming on? So Group 2 has 80% of Santa Clara residents under 18 that attend San Jose Unified School Districts, schools. Santa Clara Unified School District schools. Group 3 is less than 80% participants under the age of 18. Group 4 is adults. So couple of things I wanted to comment, right? So one, we had talked about residency, we had talked about age, and the other part is the percentage, right? And so this is what they do in the school district. And Mike, I'm not at all trying to say that this is what we would do. I'm just saying, how would we want to think about categorizing the different groups?
Another
That's
thing,
my question.
which is a little bit different than you guys, is they require that percentage of students that attend Santa Clara Unified schools. So if we have kids that go to St. Justin's or St. Clair's, they don't count them like you guys do. Which we find a little odd because their families are still paying property taxes for the school district facilities and things like that. And so we don't really understand why those kids don't count, like you guys count them.
So when
So
I
to
was,
be a non-resident resident, they not like school districts, student or players versus.
Yeah, so for like in the way Brummal, we count it as residents or children who attend schools in Santa Clara. Yeah.
They do not. And so if we're not careful about who's in our programs, we could lose that 1.5 status. Because they're not counting our private school kids, things like that, that do go to school in town, live in town, but they're not counting our residents, they're just counting their students.
So Kevin, did you want to say something before Dawn? Sorry.
when I was in Arizona, Scottsdale, they did it like you did. like you mentioned for Wade Brummal, residents plus school, people that went to,
Yeah, I like how the city does it. Includes, I mean, these are.
Okay, so then as a category, the first category that I thought we had talked about last time was Santa Clara-based organizations with 50% plus one participants, right? And those participants are then defined as either residents or children who attend Santa Clara schools. Right? So somebody writing this down for me, just to make sure we get it, right? So that would be category one.
including private schools, right?
I mean, yeah, either they attend, if they're residents or they attend schools in Santa Clara.
If their tax dollars going towards the facilities, yeah, the school district doesn't recognize that and it's. Those families are paying your taxes, so I don't know why they wouldn't recognize those players.
So
They're saying they're not our students, so like they.
Is this, are you proposing that the cities is on alignment with the school district or using this as?
no, I'm using this as an example because that's our market, right? We have, to the extent in an ideal world, it would be great if we were in alignment with the school district. I know there's some concerns about the school district, so I'm just using this as a base so that we can have the conversation about what we need to adapt, what we can keep. The concept of having different user groups is something that I thought I heard you guys say you wanted to do, right? So this is one example of how to do that. What I'd like to do today is have a definition of what's going to work for us here in Santa Clara as from the city. What I just heard was Santa Clara-based organization participants with 50% plus one participants who are students that either live or attend school in Santa Clara. That's first category. Is that correct? Right, and so the school district had 80% as the second category, right? Here it goes. Thank you.
They have at least
Thank you.
80% participants.
Can you see it? Is it big enough?
Is there more than one category?
I was sharing that.
Well, because the groups last time wanted to have a different category for those who were not residents.
Yeah,
So they're still nonprofit youth groups, but they're non-residents.
residents, yeah, not attending, yeah.
Similar to how they do sponsored groups, which,
And it's not 100, there's not,
criteria, and then
yeah,
non-sponsored.
it's the percentage.
And sponsored groups get priority.
Correct. And that's what we heard last time, is that they wanted to have the Santa Clara-based organizations be prioritization.
And remember, at one point, 3-4 years ago, we had those percentages within our criteria, but we got rid of that. So it's something that
And there's only there's.
it went along with what's the triangle name? The
Cost recovery.
It went along with that, so we got rid of that, and made just these new categories that we have, which then excluded the percentages. But because again, I'm receiving those rosters, I'm seeing who's on the rosters, I do feel that we need, and it will help Marlon and I when we're divvying out field space and all of that, with who is that priority, who's the one that's truly a youth that's Santa Clara based, Santa Clara kids, 51% and over gets priority number one, and then we go down the list from there, and whether it's the 80% or some variation of that. I know Marlon and I and Dean have done some benchmarking on what other surrounding cities have done and have our own ideas, but that's what we want to hear from you guys when you feel.
Yeah, you don't almost want it to be super complicated.
Exactly.
I feel like sponsored groups that meet this criteria get priority, and then everybody else gets what's left over. I don't know how you prioritize that, youth over adult, but
So the way the fee is structured right now, all nonprofits are the same.
I know
For the fee, but are you talking about fees or also the availability?
both.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it needs to get more granular.
yeah. So so in their case, they've made it clear that the first priority of the fields is the district schools, which makes sense, right? Because they got PE and all that kind of stuff. And it would be the same for us. We would be the first priority for our city programs, because that's what people are paying their tax dollars for. The second would be, again, is they've had 1.5 youth organizations with 50% residents or 51%,
Yeah,
residents or attend schools. then the question becomes, do you want to have another youth one or is everything else adult? Because what about those groups that are non-resident groups that have a different percentage?
Just in the city, I don't know.
Yeah.
So you're,
Already.
Based on the city should be approved.
I think you
Priority.
okay, so we're gonna say that
The adult,
only one, so it's
the youth, I think youth resident nonprofit, then adult resident nonprofit,
and then whoever else is.
and then residents, and then non-residents. But I think Angelique will, and Marlon will find stuff in the, that they could also, I mean, part of it could be, you can show what other jurisdictions are doing, Angelique, so that those organizations within Santa Clara that aren't that familiar with these various like priorities and price breakdowns can see, and then they can then give us input. Not just on what the school district does, but what's out there, right?
Which what we have faced is we have several Santa Clara youth groups, those that are in here, but because Santa Clara is growing, there's more leagues developing. We have other agencies asking for time and space that on paper look to be eligible because they meet all the criteria. But then as the league continues, there's question. And so we want to have very specific criteria that you check the box on all of these things. And that one of the things is like what you're talking about, Linda, that the school district says that they are now requiring you to show that proof every year. I think on our end, we should be showing that proof every year. Maybe we do every other year. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like if it's just, whatever. So those folks that then meet that are now our number one, after city programs, that's that first category. Also including the 51% or higher on the rosters of residents versus non-residents. I think those two things kind of go hand in hand to give you the priority. Where we have some odd ones is we have like groups that are young adults that have sort of graduated from the youth programs that still fall under the umbrella of the organization and are getting the nonprofit youth rate, which really, we don't have a adult rate, which they should really be getting, but because they fall under the umbrella of the youth sport group, they're currently doing that. And then we have a couple other just businesses that are nonprofit businesses that are renting our fields, but they're getting the $14 an hour, because that's the only fee that we have. And I'm like, well, why are they paying 14? It should be less than the resident rate of 100, maybe. So we need a adult nonprofit fee that is dedicated to those groups that are, they come in one little time that we, have been able to pop it out for them. So we have some unique situations, but I do think we just need to kind of go back to what we had, where it was the nonprofit, the 4 or 5 different categories that we had back in 2020, 2019.
I think it's for like proof of establishment, like they've been here for 5 years.
Mhm.
Just making up groups, signatures, yeah.
Do you guys require proof of nonprofit status?
Yes.
Mhm.
Should.
The other thing that gets tricky too is some of our leagues have a recreation league and a competitive league. And the competitive league may be higher non-residents versus the recreational league that's all tailored towards. So when you combine the two rosters together, you're meeting that 51%. But when you separate those rosters out, the competitive league does not meet the 51 and the recreational does. So how do we, manage that as well?
The competitive side is not on the profit.
No, they're not.
So
They have
that's.
paid coaches in the whole 9 yards,
That's.
Maybe they stay quiet on
so they should be paying more.
Shouldn't get priority.
that's part of the discussion.
Shouldn't get priority.
No,
And
well,
that's where, exactly, then it goes into, well, they're getting a lot of field space because they're competitive, so.
And we get the corners.
Yeah,
With
they
all
come and
the
kick us off our fields
Yeah.
that
but
we
we're
have
paying
permits
the same
for.
price for
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
too.
I can't, I've got a screen up here and I can't get it up there. I've got the amounts for the other agencies.
So those are some of the things that Marlon and I have sort of,
I'm not-
like, we have our ideal and we think might work, but at some point, we wanted to again hear what everybody else is thinking, or what, if you're using other agencies' field, how it's working with them. And then hopefully come to a happy medium where it is fair for everybody, because it's getting harder and harder for us. And we're the ones negotiating. Thankfully, you guys all have good relationships with each other. So when you're negotiating on there and then you're like, oh, I've already talked to Bert and Bert said we can have this and we mark it up, but really we should be the ones that are getting the requests and then divvying out that space. One of the ideas that we've thrown out there is going to a lottery system. But we're not there yet. We need to create these different statuses first before we get to that point.
So this is some of the information that the consultant had gathered when they did the cost recovery policy. So it's just kind of showing sort of, it was all over the place in terms of where the other cities were paying and how they were paying it. So when they put the $14, you can see that we were pretty much in the middle at that point, right? And that's why they felt pretty comfortable at going to the 14, which for this community was kind of a shocker, right?
Yeah.
Sunnyvale's not correct. It was $5.
No, Peters is zero.
Peters is
Is it
zero, not.
It's not 25.
Not 8.
There's also with the school district just raised rates, that they did a 3-year plan to get.
The escalation
Rollout, a rollout, yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
too.
And that's what should have happened here, right? We should have done an escalation and they didn't. Why that's, sorry?
Saratoga, for example, they have a flat rate of 36.30.
Yeah, so if I gave you 3,600, I'm covered for the entire year for every sport,
Yeah,
for all 11 of our programs.
Well, is that for Little League?
Just whatever the field you want, or for the.
No, we still have to schedule fields and stuff. We just don't say, well, that's our field. You
if you're an
can't-
organization that uses a ton of field space and you're an organization that doesn't use a ton and you're paying the same rate, that doesn't seem right either.
But if,
You're blocking the fields then.
Theoretically, you could. I think there should be a per hour fee so that you're paying for what you use. It doesn't need to maybe be that high, but then we went to this pool space all over the place, right? You pay for what you use, and if you're using less, that's saving you money. So you cut down when you need to, and then you jump back up when you're busier, right? But then,
well, yeah, I mean, like softball fields, if we use 2, we pay for 2.
right,
We use 1, we pay for 1.
right. But if there's no fee, why not reserve 2 and not use it to block out your competitors?
Right, and that's.
And that's what was happening. That's when we went back and looked at it, people were then not overbooking, right? Because originally, before there was a fee, it didn't cost them anything, so they booked everything. So nobody else could get the fee. And so what we saw was once we put the fee in, they stopped doing that, right? So that had a positive effect.
Malicious, they're logging out the field.
No, but there will be one. There will be
I
some,
think it's like, oh, we play baseball Saturday.
easier. It's just easier.
right? And it's also easier.
I'll tell you
No, just
interesting.
like we realize that's problematic. Oh, okay.
Well, then And then for us, using Reading Grant as an example, on paper, we show that it's booked, but then the league ended the previous week, but we show that it's still got 2 weeks out, but we've told a renter no, because I feel, so it tightened up once we put that fee in there. But those are the kind of issues that we would run
Or
into.
there's a cost because.
Let's take one at a time. He's got to,
So,
sorry.
when we started soccer, right, I wanted a city of Cupertino field. And they said all field are busy. And we went there, every field was empty. It was blocked by one of the big organizers. I don't want to take it. That's the only reason we came to Santa Clara and I got the field. Otherwise, it would have been Cupertino based. But yeah, I mean, they did it. They just paid, they said, I have 200 kids. Here's my 200 into 25, whatever, $5,000. And then they book every field and nobody can come in.
So what I wanted to do today, because we only have a half an hour, so I want to make sure that we walk away with consensus on categories. right? Because that's where we start on categories and definitions of categories. And then we can we'll talk about, because I know this is an issue for the staffing and how they block off the fields, but the prioritization, we'll talk about that after. But if we can agree on categories, that'll be the part we stop. And then what we need to do is update these numbers, because I think this is like 2 or 3 years ago. Update these numbers so that they're more accurately reflecting what we're doing. And then talking a little bit about the increase, where we see there's opportunities to increase the fees. So on the turf fields, the higher level fields, charging more for that to be able to offset some of the nonprofit residents, because we still have to generate the revenue, right? So we're going to try and do something that keeps the revenue neutral. But how do we get there, right? How do we get this so that this community can support it and that it makes sense? Because we cannot, as we talked about last time, give away the fields for nothing because there's maintenance costs. And so if we don't collect fees, we're going to have lower level of maintenance and you're going to run into problems, right? And then talk about Little League a little bit separately because they are sort of more of a unique, because they are on site the entire time. They're not necessarily leasing a facility, permitting a facility on an hourly basis. So can we talk about categories? We talked about the nonprofit youth. What I heard was consensus around that. I heard consensus around, then it's nonprofit adult, or I thought I heard nonprofit adult as being separate. Everybody else, nonprofit.
Profit resident,
Nonprofit resident.
more than 50%. Right?
The adults.
50% youth is first, more than 50% adult is second, and then less than 50% youth probably next. And then
All resident, I would go all resident, all non-resident.
is after that, yeah,
Yeah.
So you're suggesting just 3 categories.
basically.
Well, then you've got, I'm sure that Kim and Angelique have what we've used in the past, but it's youth, resident, nonprofit, then you'll have resident, nonprofit, then you probably have residents, you have non-residents, and then there's 4, and then the 5th would be commercial or for-profit.
You're taking this, can you repeat that? Because I'm not hearing the group who's serving youth, but has less than the 50%, right? So are they second or third?
They're a resident group. They're not.
You know, the kids?
Yeah.
That's what I'm,
Just
no, because if it's over 50, yes, I heard that, that's first priority. But if they're less than 50, say they're 48, but they're all kids, are we gonna have them be second?
Well, what if I have 100% adults that are residents that want to play cricket?
That's what I'm asking. So, but in this community, we've always said, at least my understanding, is the priority is youth. So having them be ahead of the adults seems to be more consistent with the practice has been here, as opposed to having the resident all
There
adults.
should
But
be
they're not
another
residents,
threshold.
right?
There should be a secondary threshold then. You shouldn't have a San Jose-based organization for youth come and rent Santa Clara space, right? I
Yeah.
think, I don't know.
That's what we're asking, right? I just want to make sure we're all clear on what we're saying.
Needed to define, because right now, nonprofits are defined as all encompassing everything right now. But it used to be Santa Clara based, so that's what we're trying.
Yeah, I think should be Santa Clara. Santa Clara resident nonprofit with 51% residents.
Is number 2 after priority.
After city, yeah.
So it'd be city programs and nonprofit city groups.
Youth,
Organizations serving more than 51%.
yeah, and it's 18 and younger.
So where does the adult portion come in?
Soccer, where
Would they be like
They would be.
0.5?
No. Then you have, you could do that, but that's confusing. I would have them be 3, so they'd be Santa Clara resident adult nonprofits, which you have a lot of. You can have softball, you can have basketball, because you can use these same things for the pool, the fields, for the gyms. You can use it for everything, right? So adult nonprofit, if they have a nonprofit, they're based in Santa Clara and they have 50% or more residents in Santa Clara, they should get a priority over non-Santa Clara youth groups. Just
Agree.
because they're a youth group.
Agree.
Yeah.
So I make sure there's agreement on that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of adult, there's the big ultimate frisbee,
So
and
let me ask a question.
soccer.
Sporting. Would those groups make it? If we had that, what category would they be under?
If they.
That's why I'm asking the question. That's why I'm asking the question, because I want to make sure we clear it.
They would be about 51%, but if we split the rosters between competitive and recreation. No.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons they keep their non-competitive.
It's,
So you would have to, if you wanted to try to do that, then you would have to,
I don't want some.
and then you'd want everybody to agree on it, would be competitive, non-competitive would be that would be like a 2.2A and a 2B.
We can't do that.
And then with the number of fields and who's on what, that really complicated, very fast.
It's really hard to, I mean, at some point you have to trust the information that the groups are providing you too. So there's no way to vet that unless we sat here and looked at 1,000 IDs.
Are we saying all nonprofit groups, whether they're competitive or recreational, are all the same category?
Except for you, they're grouped in with the recreational league. That's one example.
Sporting, right? Is that what you?
Yeah. Sporting's part of Santa Clara youth. Yes, you're
Yeah,
absolutely
I think that's right.
Because
They have a,
nonprofit status.
through
they have
Santa
an
Clara youth recreational side.
So I just want to be full transparency that, that's what I'm saying. I just want to make sure everybody understands this. So right now, what we've got is the city is first priority, nonprofit Santa Clara, 51% youth, nonprofit Santa Clara, 51% adult, nonprofit youth, nonprofit adult, and commercial.
a nonprofit or a resident. Did you mean resident youth and resident adult? Did you read those again?
What is
Right.
that?
Where did the first one? That was the first one. Nonprofit Santa Clara, 51% youth, nonprofit Santa Clara, 51% adult, nonprofit youth, nonprofit adult, and commercial.
You don't have what about resident?
Or just the resident.
Could have residents.
For 51%.
What if I'm a resident, I'm not a nonprofit?
Yeah, so you're paying coaches also,
Marcelo.
but you're a nonprofit organization.
Yeah,
Interesting.
you can have residents that don't actually have a 501c3
Nonprofit doesn't mean.
that want to use
Yeah.
facilities.
I know that.
We rent
On
this
occasion.
space for like soccer.
Right.
So do you want,
Also,
Yeah.
where would you want the resident, just the general resident to fall under?
They should be non-residents.
Yeah.
But after the nonprofit adult?
Yes, and it doesn't matter if you're a youth or an adult, you're just a resident.
You can't rent to run your practice for your team.
Right.
That's what they would do. They would want to rent.
get one of their.
Well, they have a different rate and they're a resident and they don't get any priority. So they're paying a premium, but they're not paying a nonprofit rate. The other thing here is you're trying to look at priority. So there's other layers of priority that you want to consider, which haven't been discussed yet, which are, historical like use seasons, because a lot of these sports are year round. And so like, for instance, comp soccer takes up a lot of space year round. And then that gets in the way of flag football or softball or baseball or cricket or other things. So when it's baseball season, baseball should have priority on those fields and softball and so on and so forth. So that's something else to look at too. But we haven't even like
No.
gotten there.
At one point,
Tiebreakers.
it was easy because there was like 4 youth.
No, I know, and that's never gonna be there again. Yeah.
So that's where having these definitions will be helpful to us as we're going
Yeah.
forward.
Like baseball season is it's a spring.
And
Yeah.
here's, I think, because there's one baseball league and there's one field.
So,
Got that going.
There's actually two leagues,
There's 2 leagues.
but we're the only
Right,
ones that
we-
use it.
yeah,
Okay.
so.
Yeah. So anyways,
It's,
And then the blue.
yeah, we had.
So this is what we have so far. Oops, no, it's not, where's not here?
It's there. Yeah, Sunnyvale.
The screen, yeah.
Yeah, I know, it's getting decimated. They're doing interlocking to,
Those are friendly, so usually typically,
yeah, but it gets the
Gotta
kid
make it
games.
bigger.
It gets-
yeah, because we do that in our softball.
get bigger, Angelique.
After our regular
Yeah,
season,
like we
Yeah.
like a rec league.
Yeah, because we had a staff that lived in Mountain View, but his kid was playing such, the Mountain View is just as bad.
Okay,
I'm from Santa Clara, 51 years. nonprofit. And then it-
is this what, reflecting what you guys have said?
Is that supposed to be non-resident nonprofit youth
This is
after resident?
non-resident,
Yeah,
no, yeah, non-resident nonprofit.
so you can do a non-resident, then you can do a indent on those or something, or, oh, you can type it out, yeah.
Which is.
Or less, right?
Yeah.
Or or
Less than
50% or less. Okay, yeah, that's getting there.
Take pictures of that.
It's in the document. That's why I wanted to type it.
Residents.
Just be above 50 and below 50.
Would be an example right now.
It's a
of
tipping point, right? It's a little more than 50. Almost
Any
like,
group
no,
has a-
66,
Not based in San Jose,
third or 2/3 vote.
it has less than 51%
We call it like,
Santa Clara residents.
Mark Cuban owns 51% of the Mavericks. Or whatever.
How are, well, when we see their rosters, that will be the determining factor. Right now, they're in here as a nonprofit Santa Clara Youth, but once we,
But they're not.
They're not, they're based out of San Jose and they're just.
Just like Golden Triangle, they're out of San Jose. They're not Santa Clara.
Yeah, there could be a local AYSO,
This one isn't.
but if this one's not, then they don't.
Right, but if they're providing you documentation that shows that they are.
I'll send it out. Don't worry.
Yeah,
I'll send it out.
because there's a Sunnyvale Alliance is an AYSO, but they're called Sunnyvale Alliance. So I don't know if are they just going by the AYSO umbrella?
Are they not?
No, it's okay, yeah.
And there's Lions and there's an AYSO group.
And Rush fits in here somewhere too.
No, we are now for the Santa Clara address, nonprofit, married to Santa Clara.
Okay, you are,
Yeah.
Okay,
Our last, club name started with Santa Clara, our address is El Camino, everything is Santa Clara.
that's great, there you go.
We did it 6 months ago.
Did it the right way, that's. Yeah,
Okay,
I've had that happen in other
Huh?
cities, I've had that happen in other
I mean,
jurisdictions.
if I'm.
We had a
putting
cricket group in Fremont that
Yeah.
that was regional, and then they hosted it in Fremont. They moved their headquarters.
No, at this point, everything. I guess I want people to know about it.
Okay, so let's play this out. So PAL would be a 51% youth. Right?
We're about 99% youth, actually.
You're being category 2.
Right.
I forgot, yeah.
Yeah, cities one.
Adults, we have our on the challenge team.
Key.
I think it's not going.
When people watching.
So Angelique, we're not gonna rent to non-residents. Regular,
Non-resident down the bottom.
Yeah, that should be commercial, non-resident.
okay,
Okay, so
so the very bottom would just say commercial/non-resident.
Well, technically, anybody
Because it doesn't have to be nonprofit,
fits in, yeah,
it could be a,
profit.
yeah, adult soccer leagues, sometimes they're semi-organized, but they don't have nonprofit status or. That, as a slash after commercial, can you put non-resident, please?
Is it? AFC,
AFC is the limit.
they use our,
Thank
But they
you.
pay,
yeah,
they pay
like
drastically.
where would they?
Hey, drastic.
They play in the commercial right now.
Right,
Yeah,
and
they
they're paying heavily.
Well, that's what commercial is for profit is commercial. It implies.
Paying top dollar.
and making donations and
Okay.
giving tickets and
Yeah,
Okay.
Now, the only thing you're gonna have is
It goes
to figure out
they hosted clinics for girls.
They did a book raiser, they did a bunch of stuff.
categories. That's fine.
Earthquakes.
But
We're
establish-
good on this?
Yeah, it's quickly falling.
Yeah, earthquakes would fall in here. So we're good on these categories?
Because earthquakes, their developmental group all use this facility.
You mean the
So
youth?
that would be
Yeah.
seven.
Their academy, but they're paying.
Yeah, their academies. That would be seven, correct?
So our current, like, if you take our current fee structure of $14 an hour, it would fit under number 2. And then our current 280 would be under number 7. Which is our 280 is our commercial rate.
Put that on there. So this is,
Yeah.
so right now, this is
Number
what,
2 would be 14. It's currently, number 3 is paying 14, but that's a TBD.
And they always-
4 is $100.
When we're nobody's here, they're always here during the day. Which.
Five?
That's their job. So.
Nonprofit, so everybody else is 280. Or nonprofits would all be the 14.
Well, no, we'll have to have that increase.
You have to do that.
We have to have that.
In resident nonprofit, it's not 14.
Yeah, 15 and 6, or 5 and 6 would be more.
Right.
Yeah.
well, they would, but right now, they're all nonprofit, so they're all paying 14. That's what I was trying to get, yeah.
Now, yeah.
Okay, so that's current is what you're showing.
Yeah.
And then we should have a category, maybe it says proposed under this new, right?
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
The delineation between the two.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, that's not,
yeah, so I just wanted to be clear on the categories for today, right?
Okay.
I'll send this out to everybody. This is the current fee schedule. Now we need to talk about, well, how do we adjust it, right? Because one of the things we heard last time was the turf field should be more expensive. So the commercial people were willing to pay more, right, than the 280. So what can we adjust them to? And what can we adjust the 51% you down from 14 and still make our revenue?
If you get more from the commercial, then you can.
well, that's it. There's not a lot, I know, but there's not a lot of,
Yeah, so we have to do the analysis, see how do we still keep the revenue the same, but what adjustments we can make, right? So the commercial people here, that to James' point, there's not a lot of use. We can go back and look at it and see what we can move on it. It's not going to be enough to offset all $14.
there's no space left. When you get these other groups.
Yeah, so
Have enough fields.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Most cities- most
Have that many
cities.
parks and fields.
that is that the rates that the commercial folks are paying and the revenue that we're bringing in is allowing us to open later and open on the weekends where we wouldn't have been able to do that. So they're sort of, they're paying those, we're bringing in that money to offset those costs that we don't have, so we can open, so we can play games on Sunday mornings where 2 years ago we weren't able to.
So I think that's good enough for today. And then we'll come back, we'll send this out to you guys, give some thought, but give some thought about what kind of adjustments and what other things that we need to think about in terms of the fees. Because when we take this back to council, our goal would be the same thing as we did with Wade Brummal. We'd want you guys to be there with us to present it as a whole, let everybody's feel like they've had an opportunity to put their input. We may not agree in the final, but I hope we'll agree in the final. But if we can agree that our goal is to try and maintain the revenue and make the adjustments to the extent we can, we just don't, if you want to have quality fields, we're gonna have to have fees. Right? And so we have to figure out what can we do to offset or feel that there's a benefit for the groups that you feel that you can support it. Fair enough? So our meeting again is next week, next Thursday?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday, so we'll be back to talk about this again next Thursday and then 2 weeks after that.
Three.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions before we leave or anything else that you guys want us to bring back for the next meeting?
I'd like to talk about the foundation thing.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, and I know it's not gonna be popular with some people in this room. But when you have a group who is 100% nonprofit, non-paid, anybody, they're paying the same amount as people who are paying soccer coaches $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000. I find that as troublesome. And I'm not trying to step on people's toes, I'm being honest. It's troublesome when you have enough money to pay coaches, but you don't have enough money to pay for fields.
So that's a discussion for the group to decide, right, and give us feedback on. We don't have a lot of folks here today. We'll make sure that we put that out so that everybody who has a vested interest can weigh in on that discussion, because that's going to be a community consensus. We want to hear everybody's feedback on. And again, we're trying to get to consensus for this group so that we can all go forward together.
It is
I
possible.
think the low attendance has to do with like the days and time. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So do you want us to change the date and time?
The time in the early evening would probably be better.
So we
So where
can,
people who are not working could make it.
I mean, even though go like running.
we have the feedback the other way.
Yeah, well, everybody was running their programs in the evenings and it wasn't a good time.
Yeah, that's why we scheduled it during the day. But happy to do it whenever, whatever's gonna work for people. Again, we're trying to make this as a process that's gonna work for folks. We wanted to try and get there, so.
Would you prefer, like, do we want to see next week's meeting moved to the evening? Or is that too short of notice? And maybe the December one, we say,
Well, if we're gonna change, we should change the meeting and not do it next week and give people notice. In the interim, we can do a doodle and ask the groups and see what's time works for folks and whether it's a day or night. The only reason I'm saying is because next week,
it's here.
it's too soon, right? So
I'm excited too. That's
for ease of, just for everybody's clarity, since we moved the Park and Rec meeting to next week, instead of having two meetings for the groups to participate, we'll just do the Park and Rec committee meeting, and then we'll do this team meeting, the meeting that we had scheduled on the 12th. And then we'll add another meeting. Does that work for people?
I'll take
And in
that.
the interim, we'll doodle and make sure it's fine.
There's
And
no-
then maybe you could put down in red the 2B
Yes. The other thing I wanted to make very clear is that you will be getting reservation in things from Angelique in terms of the fields for January, starting January. You will not be billed, right? So no one yet. We have time to work this out, right? So whatever happens, you won't get billed to the end. And so that will be
Right, so
like May.
You've already submitted your stuff for January through May. Marlon, when he gets back for vacation, that's his goal, is to get all of those permits and things taken care of before the end of the year. And the cost that you see on those is yet to be determined, so there's no
I
money.
just want to make sure that everybody knows that we're not rushing this. We're trying to make sure that everybody feels good about the process, but you're not going to have to worry about that this time being, okay?
We are still charging commercial people, though, just so you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Kim, can I have a word with you and Cynthia, please? And Damien, you could join them too if you want, I don't care.